The sun was just beginning to set, casting a golden glow over the sprawling grounds of the annual horse auction. Excitement buzzed through the air as bidders, trainers, and horse enthusiasts filled the grand arena, eager to see the prized horses that would soon be up for sale. The sounds of hooves clopping against the dirt echoed as majestic horses were led to the auction ring, each one more impressive than the last. But amid the polished coats and powerful strides of the horses on display, there was one that stood apart. The foal. This young horse, barely a year old, seemed out of place. Its coat, a dull shade of brown, appeared rough and uneven. Its legs, slightly too long for its small frame, gave it an awkward, almost clumsy appearance. While the other horses were bred from championship bloodlines, this foal had no known lineage. It was an orphan, brought to the auction with little fanfare. As the foal was paraded in front of the crowd, murmurs rippled through the crowd. No one seemed particularly interested in this unremarkable creature. Bidders glanced at it, but their eyes quickly shifted to the more polished horses with flawless coats and well-known names. The auctioneer, a tall man with graying hair and a bored expression, barely acknowledged the foal. He quickly moved on to the next horse, his voice barely rising in excitement. Next, we have a young foal, raised in the countryside. No special pedigree, just a simple young horse looking for a good home. It was clear, this foal was not going to attract any bids. And yet, one person in the crowd watched with quiet interest. A seasoned horse trainer who had seen the best and worst in horses, he saw something in the foal that others didn't. It was an unusual decision, but for him, it was the beginning of something extraordinary. As the auction progressed, the foal remained mostly ignored, pushed aside by the glimmering horses that commanded attention. Bidders crowded around the stallions and mares, their eyes shining with greed and excitement. Horses with polished coats and famous pedigrees stood proudly, each one priced higher than the last. They were horses of champions, horses that would win races and show events, horses that people believed would make them rich and famous. The foal, however, was nothing like them. Its legs were too long, and its movements were awkward, almost juvenile. It was too young to show the promise that older horses could flaunt. Its dull coat seemed to hide any potential beneath layers of unpolished fur. The foal's large eyes stared out at the crowd, but no one seemed to see what was hidden behind them. It was a horse without history, without a story that anyone cared to discover. Around the arena, whispers swirled. People barely glanced at the foal. Some shook their heads, murmuring about how unremarkable it seemed. Others laughed, dismissing it as just another poor animal sent to be auctioned off with no hope of a future. They couldn't have been more wrong. The auctioneer moved quickly, barely giving the foal a moment of attention. "Next," he called, his voice flat. "We have a foal here, a young one with no pedigree. It's just a simple horse. No racing history, no champion bloodlines. It's here to find a home." The crowd barely stirred. No one raised their paddle, not even for a glance. The few who had shown interest before now turned their attention to the more exciting lots. Even the youngest and least experienced bidders knew better than to waste time on a foal like this. The whole scene was a sad testament to how the world of horse racing and breeding focused only on the surface, on speed, on beauty, on fame, and not on the heart of the animal. But one person in the crowd remained unmoved by the laughter and the whispers. The trainer, a man with a history of working with forgotten horses, stood still, eyes locked on the foal. While others saw only a scrawny, unremarkable creature, he saw something different, something deeper. It wasn't much, but it was enough. The days that followed the auction were filled with frustration. The foal, now in the quiet fields of the trainer's farm, was nothing like the horses the man had worked with in the past. It was as though the animal couldn't or wouldn't understand the most basic commands. The trainer, a man who had worked with some of the finest horses in the world, was accustomed to the spirited nature of young horses. But this foal, it was a challenge in a way he hadn't anticipated. It wasn't that the foal was malicious, it simply seemed disconnected from the world around it. In the mornings, the trainer would lead the foal out to the paddock, expecting it to trot along behind him, just as any other young horse would. But the foal would lag behind, its movements clumsy and slow. At times, it seemed to forget that it was supposed to walk at all, standing still with its head down, eyes dull and distant. Training sessions were equally trying. When the trainer tried to introduce the foal to basic exercises, simple walking patterns, light lunging, it struggled to follow. The foal's legs were long and gangly, often tripping over itself as it tried to navigate the field. And when the trainer attempted to teach it to turn or stop on command, the foal simply stared at him as if it had no idea what he was asking. Every attempt to connect seemed futile. The foal's stubbornness wasn't born of disobedience but of confusion. It was as though the animal had never learned how to listen, how to communicate, or how to trust. Its eyes, once filled with quiet curiosity, had taken on a sad emptiness, a look that suggested it had been let down one too many times. Days turned into weeks, and the trainer began to question his decision. He had seen many young horses struggle in their early months, but there was something different about this one. Despite the foal's clear potential, it seemed to lack the basic understanding that even the most average horses possessed. It was as though its past had left a mark on it, a kind of invisible scar that prevented it from learning in a normal way. The trainer began to dig into the foal's past, seeking answers. He discovered the foal's origins abandoned at birth, raised in isolation, and brought to the auction with no history or owner. It had no stable to call home, no mentor to guide it, and no opportunity to bond with other horses. In some ways, it was a blank slate but also a frightened one, lacking the foundation most horses developed in their early days. The more the trainer learned, the more he realized that the foal's struggles were not its fault. The animal wasn't difficult by nature, it was simply lost, alone, and without direction. It had never known kindness or patience. And that was something the trainer could offer. With this newfound understanding, the trainer made a choice. He would start from scratch. No more expectations. No more frustration. Just time. Time to rebuild the bond. Time to show the foal that it was worthy of care and love. The foal's early struggles were not the end of its story, but rather the beginning of its transformation. And though it was still rough around the edges, the trainer's heart told him that the journey was far from over. It was a cold morning when the breakthrough came, though the trainer didn't realize it at first. The foal had been unusually restless that day, pacing along the fence, its eyes scanning the horizon. The trainer, now more patient than ever, stood quietly by the stables, watching the animal's subtle movements. He had learned to give the foal space when it needed it, but today, something in the foal's posture was different. As the trainer slowly approached, the foal turned its head toward him, its large eyes locking with his in a way that felt almost knowing. The animal didn't run, nor did it retreat. Instead, it stepped forward, hesitantly, as if testing the waters. The trainer extended his hand, and to his surprise, the foal moved closer, nuzzling his palm with a soft touch. It was the first real connection they had made in months. Encouraged by the foal's willingness to engage, the trainer decided to take a chance. He began working with the foal in the paddock again, this time not with commands or exercises, but with simple trust-building exercises, walking alongside it, letting it choose its pace, and observing how it responded. The foal, for the first time, seemed to find a rhythm, a certain fluidity to its movements. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. As the weeks went on, the foal's performance improved steadily. It began to respond to commands, albeit reluctantly at first, and showed an unusual grace when moving through patterns. There was something extraordinary about its movements, something instinctive. The foal wasn't just a simple creature as everyone had believed. It moved with purpose, with a deep understanding of the space around it, as if it had been trained in the art of precision before. That's when the trainer started to dig deeper into the foal's past. A visit to the local records office revealed nothing about the foal's origins, but the trainer couldn't shake the feeling that it was no ordinary animal. He visited nearby farms, talking to older trainers who might have known something about the foal's bloodlines. Finally, one man, the owner of a nearby stud farm, recognized the foal's unusual gait. "That's not just any horse," the man said, his voice low. "That's the foal of Silver Crest." Silver Crest was a legendary racehorse, known for his strength, speed, and unshakable will to win. He had been unbeaten in the highest races before disappearing mysteriously several years ago. Rumors swirled that he had been injured beyond recovery, but no one had ever confirmed the full story. His offspring were said to be rare and nearly impossible to find. The trainer's heart skipped a beat. It made sense now, the foal's uncanny ability to pick up on complex movements, the elegance it displayed in the ring. It was no accident. This foal was a direct descendant of one of the greatest champions to ever race. But the discovery raised more questions than answers. Why had this foal been abandoned? Why had it been kept in the shadows, overlooked at the auction as if it was just another unwanted horse? And why hadn't anyone else seen what the trainer now understood? As he returned to the farm, the trainer couldn't help but feel a mix of awe and frustration. He had stumbled upon something extraordinary, something that could change everything. But for now, all he could do was nurture it, help it grow into the horse it was always meant to be. The foal was no longer just a forgotten animal. It was a hidden gem, a champion in the making. And this was only the beginning. With the truth of its lineage now clear, the trainer's approach to the foal shifted. No longer was it just an awkward, clumsy animal struggling to find its place. It was a rare and powerful creature, one that had been born with extraordinary potential. But potential alone was not enough. The foal would need time, patience, and training to unlock its true abilities. Over the next few months, the trainer dedicated himself fully to the foal's development. The early mornings and long hours spent in the paddock began to pay off. Slowly but surely, the foal's movements became more fluid, more intentional. It began to understand the drills, responding to the trainer's cues with increasing precision. The foal's natural grace and agility were undeniable, but it was the bond between them that truly made a difference. The foal no longer saw the trainer as just another figure in its life, it saw him as its guide, its partner. Word of the foal's remarkable progress began to spread. The trainer, once hesitant to share his discovery, was now faced with inquiries from other trainers, buyers, and race organizers. At first, he was reluctant to show the foal to the world. He didn't want to rush its development, nor did he want the animal to become just another commodity. But the foal's undeniable talent was too big to ignore, and soon enough, the trainer entered it into a regional competition, unsure of how it would fare but confident in the foal's potential. When the day of the competition arrived, the foal stepped into the arena with an air of quiet confidence. The crowd watched, some skeptical, some intrigued. No one expected the foal to be anything extraordinary. But when the race began, it quickly became clear that something special was happening. The foal, with its unique blend of speed and precision, easily outpaced its competition. It moved with a fluidity that was almost otherworldly, its muscles working in perfect harmony. The crowd gasped in awe as the foal surged ahead, crossing the finish line far before the other competitors. It was a victory, but more than that, it was a revelation. The trainer, standing at the sidelines, felt a swell of pride in his chest. This wasn't just a horse. This was a living testament to the power of patience, trust, and second chances. The foal, once forgotten and ignored, was now a rising star, a champion in the making. From that moment forward, the foal's name became synonymous with greatness. Trainers from across the country clamored to get a chance to work with it, and racing leagues eagerly watched its every move. But for the trainer, none of that mattered. What mattered was that he had believed in the foal when no one else did. And now, together, they were about to change the course of history. The atmosphere at the Grand Equestrian Competition was electric. Flags waved in the cool breeze, and the stands were packed with eager spectators, all waiting for the next thrilling race. It was the event of the season, an opportunity for horses to prove their worth on the biggest stage, a place where champions were made and dreams were shattered. The trainer had entered the foal into this competition not out of arrogance, but because he truly believed in the animal's potential. Yet, even now, standing at the edge of the arena, he couldn't help but feel the weight of uncertainty. The foal was no longer a simple auction finds, it had become a symbol of hope and perseverance. The trainer had spent months molding it into the horse it was now. Its natural agility had flourished under careful training, and its speed was unmatched. Yet, this competition would be different. It wasn't just about talent, it was about stamina, focus, and heart. And for the first time, the trainer wasn't certain if the foal was truly ready to face the pressure. As the competitors lined up at the starting gates, the trainer looked over at the foal. Its coat shone in the sunlight, its eyes alert but calm. The foal seemed at ease in this moment of high tension, its posture perfect, as if it understood the significance of the race ahead. The horn sounded, and the race began. The foal took off with a burst of speed, its legs stretching in powerful strides. The crowd gasped as the young horse surged ahead of the pack. But it wasn't just speed, it was the way it moved, the grace and precision in its every step. It glided over the track like it had done it 1,000 times before, its movements fluid and controlled, a stark contrast to the other horses who struggled to maintain their pace. But the true test came at the final stretch. The Foal was neck and neck with the reigning champion, a horse that had won this competition for the last 3 years running. The crowd roared, cheering for both horses, but it was clear that the Foal was pushing ahead with a determination that could not be matched. The trainer held his breath as the Foal dug deep, its muscles working in perfect harmony. With one last burst of energy, the Foal crossed the finish line, winning the race by a mere nose. The crowd erupted into applause, the roar deafening as people leapt to their feet. The Foal had done it. It had claimed victory in the most prestigious race of all. The trainer stood at the edge of the track, his heart racing. The victory was sweet, but it wasn't just about the title. It was about everything they had overcome together, the struggles, the doubts, and the journey that had led them here. The Foal was no longer a forgotten animal from an auction, it was a champion. And it had only just begun. As the Foal stood in the winner's circle, the cheers of the crowd echoing in its ears, it was hard to believe this was the same animal no one had given a second glance just months ago. From the dusty corners of the auction house to the grandest stage in the equestrian world, it had defied expectations at every turn. The trainer, standing beside the Foal, couldn't help but smile. He had seen many horses in his time, but none had ever touched his heart like this one. The Foal had taught him patience, perseverance, and the quiet power of belief. It wasn't just a horse, it was a living testament to the idea that greatness doesn't always come in the most obvious package. As the Foal's story spread across the country, people began to see it for what it truly was, not just a champion, but a symbol of second chances. Its legacy would be felt for years to come, not only as a racehorse but as an example of resilience, a reminder that even the most overlooked and underestimated can rise to greatness. For the trainer, this was just the beginning. Together, they had rewritten the story of the Foal and in doing so, had forged a legacy that would last long after the final race.